2 viewers, 3 viewers. So just as Debbie's just starting, she's just doing a bit of prep work. Just thought we'd get on before we're too late as such. So she's just doing a bit of prepping, and we'll start very soon. We'll just wait for a few more people to come on and then we'll start. Hope everyone's having a lovely Friday. Really nice to see the sun come out. Hope everyone's has nice weather. In a brilliant mood as well, yeah, that's true. And yeah, tell us where you are, say hello, comment on, and then we can see where you're all watching from. That's really right, Friday feeling. We've got more people. No one's coming to there. No one.
Remember that advert? Thanks, lady, it's crunchy.
Don't forget to put your thing on. Oh, we've got Jennifer and we've got Lindsay. Jennifer is watching while she's celebrating a 60th birthday cake. I think it's time for coffee. I think it's time for coffee as well, but I forgot mine, so. But also happy that we don't actually have to wear any clothes at the moment. So Jenny doesn't actually look like this tomorrow.
There we go.
Yeah, I've got 2 jumpers on those.
Yeah, some kind of balances it out really, doesn't it? I don't think I'm brave enough to be without a jumper in here. Definitely not.
Okay. Right, should we
we're good.
Start and then
Right.
close up?
Okay, so good afternoon everybody. Thank you for joining us once again for one of our live streams, our Friday afternoon sessions. We today are going to do a floral crown, or circlet if you like, for a bride or bridesmaid. This is one of the first requests that we've had from you guys that have been watching us. Laura put on our Facebook page, if you've got any requests of things you'd like us to demonstrate, then let us know. So this is from one of our requests. So I'm going to do 2 different styles. I'm going to do a very thin and delicate circlet headdress, very rustic in its appearance, quite a natural feel to it, and quite simple. And then I'm going to do a real trip back into the past. I'm going to do an 80s style, which I have to say are becoming really in vogue now. So that's kind of like a big blousy headdress. So bear in mind, one of the things that you should take into account with any kind of fresh flower that's going to be adorning the head is you do lose a lot of heat from your head, especially when you're nervous. So as you get nervous, your hands and your head are the places where you get a lot of heat leaving from. So as you can appreciate, carrying flowers and wearing flowers on your head on a wedding day is going to be not problematic exactly, but they're not going to last as well as they would if they were in a perfect environment. So it's the best idea really for hair flowers is to select flowers that really will last quite well. The first headdress that I'm going to do has these beautiful hellebores. I think this one's winter bells.
Winter bells, yeah.
And then we've got some rosemary. Now rosemary in wedding flowers kind of represents remembrance. So if you have a loved one that's passed away and you want to remember them or they were significant to you and it's your wedding day, then perhaps including rosemary somewhere might be a nice thing to do. Also got gypsophila. Good old gypsophila. We're going to use some of that in the headdress as well. So this is a very fine, delicate one that I'm preparing. So all I'm doing at the moment is just wiring up some pieces of rosemary. Now the reason why I'm wiring it is because it then has more flexibility. You can then add it to the headdress, move it around without worrying that it's going to snap and break off. Also, by wiring and taping the ends, it's securing as much moisture in the stem as you possibly can, therefore hopefully promoting as much longevity as you can.
So just stop there, Debbie. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come in a bit closer so people can see more. and I'm going to hide your face, so just to let you know that.
That's good.
So you won't see your face.
Guys out there want to see the flowers, not me. Okay, so just to explain how I'm just wiring these little pieces of rosemary up. The rosemary naturally has a sort of a branch effect to it. So I'm just hooking the silver wire around the base of the first branch, bringing the ends together and doing what we call a single leg mount with the wiring. So it's nice and sturdy, and then just covering up the mechanics with the parafilm, and again sealing moisture into the stem, and that's all there is to it. So just wiring up all these little pieces. There we go. I would recommend ideally that for a headdress you either make it up on the day of the wedding or on the day of the event if you can, or at the very last minute the night before. Best way to store them is to line a box with cellophane. On top of the cellophane, in the base of the box, some wet tissue paper or some wet kitchen roll, something like that that's going to absorb the moisture. Lay the finished headpiece onto the wet tissue paper, cover it over very loosely with the rest of the cellophane, and then put the lid of the box on. And you can store that somewhere cool overnight. It kind of creates its own little self-contained mini climate, really, I suppose, and keeps them as fresh as they possibly can be. If you're travelling a distance, I would also put frozen freezer blocks underneath the wet tissue paper for transportation, and then it keeps them as cool as you possibly can. Okay, so if you've got any questions out there, guys, please do ask them, and Laura and I will do our very best to answer them for you. You probably can't tell from the view that you're getting at the moment. We do have other members of staff in our workroom with us today, so if I ask for advice from any of the other girls or ask them to lend a hand, don't be surprised. So we've got Jenna and we've also got Nat who are with us this afternoon, all part of our floristry team here at Triangle. But they're very quiet. They're like little mice. Not getting much feedback from them this afternoon. Okay, I think...
We'll be out the door soon now, you told them that.
I know, absolutely. Nat has on previous occasions done a live stream for me when I've not been able to do it myself, so she's one of the braver members of staff here, aren't you, Nat? Okay, so I'm just finishing covering these little pieces of rosemary. There we go. Now, just to show you how to wire up the hellebores. Now, the hellebores have a slightly, I don't know if you can see that there, at the base of the flower, it's a little bit wider there, so you can actually push into where the base of the seed pod is and then tape around that, and that will hold that quite nice and firmly, securely. And I've got another piece of wire left there, so I'm just going to add one more flower.
I've got a question from Tracy who asks, can you store buttonholes and corsages in a similar way to how you would the flower crown?
You certainly can. What I would say also with buttonholes is if you are putting them together the night before, providing you haven't completely covered the stems and the stems are still free, so say for example you've got this sort of scenario and it's bound there, what you can do is put that piece of stem into some wet oasis and then just finish it off the following day. All right. Okay, so just finishing off taping here. Now what I recommend is you measure the head first. Make sure you do that with something that's not stretchy, because when you're putting a piece of wool or something around the head, the tendency is to, when you're putting a piece of when you're putting a piece of wool around your head, the tendency is to stretch it to fit to get the size, and obviously in reality it's going to be long, it's not going to be the right size. So when you're measuring, make sure you measure something that's not going to stretch. Use that as the size or the length that you need for the overall finish. And then I would normally cut what I call a stay wire. So that's just a single wire in the length that you've measured. So this one's not for real today, but just assuming that this is the length that you want. So this is your stay wire. Then obviously the finished product will be that kind of, that's obviously quite small, but this is just as a practice for you, or just as a sample. Okay, so I'm now going to start putting this together. I'm not going to wire the gypsophila per se, I'm just going to cut it into tiny little pieces, and then because I'm going to be taping it as I go along, the tape will actually secure the gypsophila in place.
So there is a lot of wiring involved.
There is.
In doing a flower crown.
There is, yeah. If you do it this way, there is certainly.
What is the benefit of doing the wiring every single flower?
Because you've got the flexibility. So if you're, I'll show you. I'll start taping onto the stay wire. And as we go along, whoops. I'll start adding some gypsophila. Then what I'm going to do is I'm adding another wire in, and that I'm going to leave free. Cover that, whoops, cover that with parafilm first. Oops, hands are a bit cold, I'm snapping the tape today. Excuse me. And taping that wire in to the back, so then this can be joined to the other end to secure it. What you can also do, if you don't want one that's a rigid circle, here you can actually fix on, if you bind that back into a hairpin, you can fix ribbon onto that piece, so you can actually tie the ribbon around the head to make the circlet rather than it actually being a formed ring. Okay, so as we progress, adding in the pieces of, okay, so because I'm wiring them, the benefit is once this sits on the head, you can actually move it up, down or around and actually make it as an integral part of the hair design. If you've got a lot of curls, a lot of ringlets and things like that, you can actually bend this into the hair, so A, it secures it in place quite well, and also it makes it look like it is actually an integral part of the design of the hair rather than something that's just been plonked on the top like a hat.
Perfect.
Putting it very delicately.
We've got Melanie asking a question about the parafilm. Are you stretching the tape as you use it?
Yes, so binding it round, as you stretch it, it becomes more, it's not sticky, but it actually, when you stretch it, it does become, I'll show you, do a close-up, is that cool? Okay, so this is how thick it is normally. When you stretch it, you can see how stretchy it will become. It's actually easier to bind round. I'll show you. Using the stretch piece that I've done, you can see how neat you can get it with the stretched parafilm. Okay, now if I do the unstretched, really difficult. So it's not. Okay, so that's using it unstretched. You can see the difference, can't you?
Yeah, visible difference. Perfect. And is it quite easy to, obviously you've just seen, but is it quite easy? Is it
very,
practice?
Yeah, I guess it is practice really, because you need to have a stretching and twisting motion at the same time.
Yeah.
I'll show you what I mean. If I add that little piece of gypsophila in as we go along, so you bind it around, and then as you stretch it, you twist. Stretch and twist, stretch and twist. And then I'll cut the excess stem off that I don't need. And you end up with quite a neat finish. You see that okay?
Yeah.
Alright, so just to reiterate the reason for wiring everything, I'll just add a few more bits in here, then I can show you. I think we've just managed to clear the workroom completely. Okay, so stretch and twist. They're afraid I'm going to ask them to help. Stretch and twist, stretch and twist. Okay, so the beauty of wiring is, this means, as I was saying before, you can actually move the flowers and the foliage into the position that you want. So if you don't wire them, when you try and do that, they literally snap. So you can see how we're progressing there, and very much keeping this consistent in its balance. So I'm doing a piece of gypsophila, then the hellebore, gypsophila, hellebore, and so on and so forth, and then interspersing the rosemary in between. Excuse me, I do apologise, my voice is a bit squeaky today. So let us know if you've got any questions. Tell us what you're up to this afternoon, what you've got planned for the bank holiday weekend. And what's the weather like with you guys? Laura was saying it's so nice to actually see the sunshine for a change.
And not to have to wear a coat.
And not to have to wear a coat. I think it's the first for one of our live demos that I haven't got a coat on.
No. Or a scarf.
Or a scarf. I'd like to say I'm really a size 8 under all this clothing, but sadly not. No. I can't blame all the coat, all the layers really. Okay, so we're gradually building up. Now, I have to be honest with you, doing a flower crown is time consuming. There are several elements to it. But it is something that if you do sort of the night before the wedding, perhaps a whole group of you could get together, somebody can wire the bits up for you, someone else can start putting them together. So it can be a social thing if you want to get your bridesmaids on board, if you're actually doing it yourself. Okay, so that's loads of bridesmaids down the country now, quivering in fear, thinking their bride is going to get them to do hair crowns.
It's become quite a nice idea to do for hen parties as well, hasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Is that, and actually, very much the DIY trend is becoming quite a nice social part of the wedding. You know, you can get yourself a few jam jars together and decorated the jam jars, and then actually getting your bridesmaids and your friends to help pop flowers into the jar, actually over a glass of Prosecco the night before the wedding, or even the night before the wedding. You know, it can actually draw people together as well, especially if you've got bridesmaids from sort of all parts of the country that don't necessarily know each other terribly well. It can be a really good way of breaking the ice and getting everybody to know each other before the day. So by the time the wedding gets there, you've got Prosecco buddies.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it can be a really nice social thing to do. And it's really, I should be saying this really being a florist, but it's a really nice thing to know that you've done part of your wedding flowers. It makes it really personal.
Absolutely.
Having said that, can be incredibly stressful if you're doing them yourself, so I would totally understand if somebody decided they would prefer someone else to do them for them. I must confess to doing my own flowers many years ago and being a little bit stressed when the flowers came in because they weren't quite the standard that I hoped they were going to be. So yeah, even for a florist that's been in the industry for 40 years, it's still stressful even now. So yeah, flowers coming in and not quite at the stage you hoped they'd be. I've had lilies sitting at home in my house with the heating on full blast in the summer, so the house is like a sauna, desperately trying to get these lilies open.
That's what we're a bit like with peonies at the moment.
Peonies and lilies are the bane of the florist's life, they really are.
They are lovely.
They're so beautiful but so unpredictable. We never know at what stage they're going to come into us, and oh dear, the weather has such an important impact in every respect, because the weather will determine on how they progress in the growing stage, and the ambient temperatures when they're delivered will determine how quickly they open, and they're all things that we don't have any control over whatsoever.
Absolutely.
So yeah. So when you ring up and ask us for advice on peonies and you hear that loud sharp intake of breath and there's a sort of well, then perhaps you'll know why.
Well, it's a key example, the peonies on the left, which they can't see at the moment, but we've got one that's all in the same bunch. We've got one that's opening beautifully, and then we've got one right next to it that's not so.
Yep. I'll hold those so you can see. I don't know if you can see that. Is that
down a bit?
Down a bit, down a bit, down a bit.
Yeah,
so they all came in the same bunch, and this one's not open, and this one is ready to drop. So, and they are, how old are they? 2 weeks? 10 days, 2 weeks old, yeah. So, yes, the delightful peony. Absolutely beautiful, but an absolute nightmare to predict.
We've actually got Kim that said she's got a lily and a peony wedding next weekend, so she's in for a treat.
Oh, bless you. Oh. Okay. Well, hopefully, potentially the weather's going to improve. So hopefully if the sort of ambient temperature is a little bit warmer, it might inspire them to open up.
We tend to sing to us.
That's probably why they don't open.
Absolutely.
So, just for those of you who didn't realise, that was me doing the impression of a lily staying closed. Yeah, we are quite mad here, in case you hadn't noticed, guys. You have to be to work with flowers.
That's very true.
Okay, so I'm nearly coming to the end of this. This isn't as long as I would usually do a headpiece, because as you can see, it's going to be someone with a very small head, but this just purely for demonstration purposes really today. Okay, so we're gradually binding the rest of the flowers on.
So you're doing it on top of the wire as opposed to under. You've got to.
Absolutely. But you can, whoops, just twist that around a bit. Okay, so just to show you how to finish, I'm just going to have to move this over the side, so I've got a bit of weight at the bottom so I can twist. Up. There we go. So that's going to be my finished product. So I've done it very flat, as Laura said, all on top of the wire. So when you bring the two ends together, depending on what you're going to have in this position, you might have a bow or a ribbon or some way of finishing it. If you're just joining it together, you can just bind the covered wire around. Now I don't know if you can see that all right, can you, Laura? Okay, so just to show you again, so you've got the two ends, push them together, oops, and then you can bind, the covered wire around the ring, and then I usually tape that over as well, just to cover up the mechanics. But you can leave it free if you're not entirely sure on the bridesmaid's head size, because it can then be released and adjusted should you need to. I'm going to leave that for the moment. So then, because we've wired everything, you can actually bend it in and around to the position that you want. You can see I'm twisting these all into the correct position. Obviously very tiny, not really suitable for a head, but just to give you an example. And again, because it's all wired, you can actually bend it into the position that you want.
That's a good size. I don't think mine is that big.
Okay, perhaps I'm basing it on my own.
We've got Joan asking a question to say, do you find it hard to keep the flowers and foliage all in a straight line as you go along when you twist the tape around to secure it?
It can be, yes. Today I've done it on the bench so you guys can see what I'm doing. Usually I would stand with it down beside me, so you've got the length and the weight in front of you, and as you twist it you can actually keep it all balanced. I just want to show you on the back of this how neat and tidy it is. Okay, so there we have a really delicate circlet.
Perfect.
And I don't think...
No, sorry. I'll take a photo of someone wearing it and post it on the page for you all.
Hopefully not me.
Just a question quickly before we start the next one.
Mm-hmm.
How many stems have you used to create that flower crown?
Okay, so I used literally one stem of the hellebores, probably a quarter or even a third of a stem of the gypsophila, because you can see I've got loads left here, and about 3 stems of rosemary. So really cost effective if you don't take your time into account.
Yeah,
that's the costly element, your time. But obviously if you're doing it for yourself, then presumably you won't worry about that.
Perfect. Right. Let's clear the deck and move on.
Okay, so we're going to do our 1980s inspired one now. Okay, now this is something that is going to be quite heavy to wear. So again, I'm starting off with the stay wire, and again I'm only going to make it relatively small, because otherwise you guys will be still drinking your cocoa by the time I've finished.
Friday,
be cocoa.
not drinking cocoa.
Exactly. Friday night and a bank holiday weekend.
True.
Well, for some of us anyway.
Depends where you are in the world.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I'm going to use more blousey style flowers on this occasion. Got some Athena roses here, which I'm just going to remove the outer guard petals of. And I've got our beautiful, beautiful peonies. A couple of those. Oh, that's nice as well. We'll have that one.
So these lovely peonies have been on my desk for a week, so I am letting you guys have them.
I did see tears in Laura's eyes when I was cutting them then.
I've still got a few left, so.
And then we've got some ranunculus that I'm going to add. So we've got very, very blousey open blooms that I'm using on this one. And I have some more Athena roses. Now, Athena roses, this is probably not going to sell them really, but I would say Athena roses tend to be a little bit of a poor man's avalanche. Would you say that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Same colour tone, but a smaller head, and not quite so blousy. Now I'm just removing the outer guard petals.
Colour
They are.
But they can be, we were discussing this yesterday actually, they can be quite an unpredictable head size.
They can.
So sometimes they come in quite small and then others they come in quite large. So it all does depend on the grower that it comes from, the season, so what the temperature is, and there's lots of varying factors that can affect what Athena you get.
Okay, so we've got pieces of olive here, and again I'm just going to wire those in a similar vein. So this is our colour tone. I don't know if you can kind of get it. We've got pinks through to ivory, through to that deep purple, and then we've got grey foliage. Okay, so just wire up the peonies. Oops. I've got a mixture of wires here. I can't pick up the one I need. There we go. So I'm just internally wiring that so it's nice and secure.
So while Debbie's doing that very quickly, I just want to let you all know about eucalyptus as it comes to the end of May and the start of June. Just because we not only do how-tos and everything, but we also do an estimate system on our website, which allows you to get a quote for up-and-coming months for events coming up. So, just to let you know about eucalyptus, because obviously it's the most popular foliage out there for weddings, mainly for its colouring, and also the shape of it comes in so many different types. So it's at the end of May and the beginning of June. It's in between seasons. So it's in very short supply at the auction, and therefore due to the demand the prices can reflect this, so it will become more expensive. So Debbie's got the perfect example as a substitute today. So you could opt for olive branches, or you've got a lot of other foliages like pistache, sophoruscus, that we would always recommend to have as a plan B, just in case that there is not enough supply or the quality is not up to our standard. So
if you need that grey kind of colour tone that a lot of people are looking for, especially for vintage weddings and things like that, you might also like to consider Senecio.
You've also got Lanzes, the
Stachys, yeah. And also coming in now is the Brunia, that's silver grey. There's also Coccia, but that's not really available this time of the year. But yeah, there are alternatives to the grey foliage. So just because eucalyptus isn't available, then don't panic.
Yeah, don't panic, anyone. We always can suggest alternatives. Just wanted to let you know, just because we know that it's such a popular foliage, and to be fair, normally we'd probably use it in something like this, but we just wanted to give you an alternative for the weddings in May and the beginning of June.
Absolutely. So just gradually wiring all these bits and pieces up, and as I said, it won't be a huge headpiece lengthwise, but it will be quite a large headpiece flower-wise.
Absolutely. That two massive peonies sitting there.
Yeah, I'm going to try not to make it look like eyes, headlights.
With the peonies as well, when you're making a headdress, how open, because obviously they are quite open, but how open would you normally recommend them to be?
I'd try and go between that and this. So slight.
Show that one, sorry.
Sorry, yeah. So this, perfect. Da-da-da. Perfect stage. Absolute perfect stage. Because then when the heat from the head hits the flower, it will open up a little bit more.
Blossoms, yeah.
The problem you've got if you use them fully developed like I am now is they're very delicate.
Yeah.
And they're not going to have a very long lifespan. So I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes, as they say. Alright, and then I've got some little pieces here of Astilbe. So, excuse me. Oh, this is baby blue. Having said we're not using eucalyptus today, I have got a couple of pieces of baby.
I knew she'd get some in.
It's just, I love it, love it, love the smell, love the texture, love the shape.
But after June, absolutely fine. Be back on sale, just like normal.
It's just a seasonal thing, isn't it?
It's just it's in between seasons. Last year it was we had the in between season, and we also in Italy there was a heat wave, so it scorched all the new growth and it just caused massive problems. So hopefully it's not hot in Italy this year.
Yeah, don't say that to people who are going to Italy on holiday.
Yeah, we're not going on holiday there, but that's what we're hoping.
And also they had really bad problems with wind, didn't they? Storms and what have you as well. So they had the heat and the wind, so it then ripped all the scorched leaves, and it was disastrous. Anyway.
So you can't predict weather.
Excuse me 1 second. I'm just going to... Nat, would you be able to pass me another parafilm, please, my lovely? Thank you.
So yeah, Jennifer, so absolutely fine.
As if by magic.
All the rest of the time of year, eucalyptus is absolutely fine. It's just this in between seasons where the new growth happens. So middle of August should be absolutely fine. Yeah.
Okay, so we now are going to start putting together this headdress. So this is my stay wire, as I showed you in the previous one. I'm going to start off with some huckleberry. I haven't wired the huckleberry. It's literally just being taped in on this occasion. I know. On the edge, me. Living on the wild side. Okay, and now, yeah. As you can tell, I've had my coffee today. I should get told later, step away from the coffee.
We do actually have to tell her that, because
yeah,
get quite messy.
Okay, so we've got the huckleberry and the Astilbe, and now adding some of the olive, and we're going for a slightly more random appearance on this occasion. That one was very set. This one is going to be a little bit more random. So, building up. The flowers I have wired. So, one of our viewers earlier asked me about keeping everything flat. You can see already starting to droop. So that's when I would usually suspend it to tape.
Okay.
But obviously, as I'm trying to show people what to do, it's a bit more difficult to do that today. Add some of my rosemary. There's no set pattern per se for this one. As I say, going for more of a random appearance.
Another thing to say about seasons is we're using ranunculus today, but as we come a little bit later into May and June, it will not be available because ranunculus is very seasonal and is not normally available in summer months. So that's one thing to be aware of. Although it's very beautiful, we would probably recommend a substitute for that as a spray rose. You can get a lot of larger spray roses, for instance, Bubbles, Bombastic, Freeland. So there's a lot of larger varieties that you can get that are really similar to the ranunculus. Or you could do something like Lisianthus.
Yeah, the double lizzies would work well.
Yeah, to get a similar shape, or maybe a smaller smaller rose.
The only problem with the roses,
structured.
Yeah, they're a bit more. You've got sort of that sort of tulip shape as opposed to that blousey shape. That's the only issue. But yeah, that is the thing with flowers. They are seasonal.
They are seasonal.
And from a cost-effective point of view, you're often better off buying what's seasonally available as opposed to buying what you like per se.
better value for money then.
Yeah, we do have on our website actually a complete section devoted to seasonal availability, don't we?
Yeah, all the flower
seasonal
guides
options.
And to be fair, as I was saying earlier, if you did an estimate on the site, if you have an up and coming event, it is worth just to put what you like in as such, and we can always recommend alternatives.
Yeah, we're always willing to offer any advice that you might need. Because colours colours are so subjective. I mean, one person's pink is another person's peach. So, you know, if you are unsure, the pictures on our website are very, very good, but at the end of the day, they have been through several print processes, and also they can always be different colour depending on what medium they're viewed on. So what you see on an iPad, on a phone, might not necessarily be the same colour tone that you get from a laptop. So if you are ever unsure, just give us a call and we can advise. Oh, we'll do our best to advise. Okay, so you can see how we're gradually building this up. And you can see I wasn't joking when I said it was going to be a big headpiece. Sorry, I'm going to have to turn this one down because the weight... Hold this one downwards because the weight is...
It's a surprise when you come back up.
Or do you mean it's a surprise that I do come back up? Okay, so adding these pieces of olive.
Do you have anyone watching that has that does make flower crowns, or does it like a different way of making them? Comment if you do. I'd love to know.
Absolutely. I have also done in the past a stay wire that's bound in satin ribbon, and then you've just added pieces into the satin ribbon, which gives a nice back to it. But to be honest with you, you don't really see it when it's on the head. So it's more for the person putting it on, really.
Wendy asks, are you slightly bending the wire as you go to form the circlet?
Slightly bending the wire? Oh, do you mean like that? It's literally, Wendy, because of the weight. It's not. I'm not actively trying to. You can see how much weight there is there. That's what's causing it to bend. Now you could use a heavier wire gauge, but actually if you do that, it's going to add to the finished weight of the finished product. So yeah, and you don't want the person wearing it to feel like they're bound down for the rest of the day. So I'm trying to keep it as lightweight as I can. That's half the reason why I'm not wiring all of the foliage. Does that answer your question? Sorry.
So.
Okay, so adding some more huckleberry in here as we go along. And what I'm also doing, I don't know if you probably had noticed that, is I'm actually adding a few pieces at a time before I tape them in. So holding them and taping them. So again, I'm just going to, I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, I'm holding it down. Is that a good, yeah? And then binding them into position. As you can see, it starts to get quite heavy. It's probably why it went out of, why these big headdresses went out of fashion with florists, because they're quite difficult to put together.
And time consuming as well.
Definitely. So you can see why you do pay, I won't say a premium as such, but you can see why you do pay that little bit more for something like this. It is literally because of the amount of labour that goes into putting it together. My piece of Stilby's decided that it would like to join in with my piece of parafilm.
Yeah, you think something so small as such would be or more on the cheaper line, but you actually don't consider the labour that would go into it if you're not in the industry, say.
Exactly. Well, if you think of the flowers that I've used, it's very minimal. But again, it's the time. I mean, I've just used 2 peonies, 3 roses, 4 pieces of ranunculus, and the rest is just foliage. Oh, and 2 pieces of astilbe so far. So yeah, it's literally the labour involved that's where your cost is at.
So in terms of the, whilst you're just doing, in terms of the conditioning process, how many days in advance would you recommend to receive the flowers, and then when would you consider to make up this type of arrangement?
Oh golly, that's a really hard question because we've got a real mix here.
Sorry, if it was generic. So ignore the peonies.
Okay, all right.
So just roses, some foliage.
Okay, so for a Saturday wedding, I'd recommend taking delivery on Wednesday, cut and condition Wednesday, leave them to develop Thursday, and then pop this together Friday night, late Friday night if you can. Preferably before too much Prosecco. There you go, is that alcohol come into it again?
We don't have a problem.
It's ironic really, because I don't really drink.
I don't really either. I do love gin, but trying to be good, so I haven't really had much gin, but I absolutely love it.
It's become the in vogue drink now, hasn't it? Right, so I'm actually going to draw slightly to a close here soon, just simply because I'm aware that you guys are probably starting to nod off now. So I'm just...
Still got a considerable amount of viewers. We've got about 38, 40 viewers.
Excellent.
So, lovely
excellent.
to see you all.
Yeah, thank you for supporting us today. And as I said, this was the reason why we've done this particular style headdress is because of a request. So if you have got any further requests of particular styles and designs that you'd like us to put together, then do please give us a shout and we'll do our best to include them. May not be in the too near future though, because we have. I think Laura's working on our 2019 now, aren't you, Laura?
Absolutely. So another thing to be aware of is we do have a YouTube channel, and we've also got something else coming up, but I can't tell you yet. Very exciting thing in motion, but I can't let you know that yet. But you will be revealed all next week. YouTube, in fact, we've got lots of how-to videos on there. So do pop over. If we can't do a live, we do try to do a how-to guide of that particular demonstration. So if it's not a live, we can always do that for you, if that makes sense.
Perfect sense. Yep. Okay, so I'm just going to pop that in there now. Okay, so I'm going to draw this particular one to a close simply because you guys have been very patient. You've been there for an hour nearly now, so you probably want your lunch.
They've probably eaten their lunch.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. So tell us what your events are this weekend. Tell us what you're planning to do flower-wise. Anybody got any bank holiday weddings going on this weekend? I'm sure you probably have. It's normally quite a popular time to get married. So I'm guessing somebody somewhere's got weddings on this weekend. So just drawing to a close here, just finishing the end. Now, as you can appreciate, this is not as long or as big as it could be. Just joining it up as you would. And then we can, because all the flowers are wide, we can bend those into position. I'm actually going to join this slightly separate to how I would do, simply so you can get an impression on how it looks as opposed to how it's finished. Because I finished that one off so you could see. I'm just going to take that in for the moment.
It's very fiddly, isn't it?
Very fiddly. Whoops. Tape loves me today, doesn't it? Okay, so now I'm just going to go through the process, oops, this way up, sorry, of just twisting these flowers back into position.
We've got Kerry, who's a wedding planner, and she's sat here working on my wedding scuffles and watching you. Flowers are gorgeous.
Thank you.
It's lovely to see you, Kerry.
Yes, thanks for joining us. I bet you've got loads that you're planning to do for the year. Okay, so now you can see roughly how it looks
And come down. Okay,
and how big.
Perfect, you don't have to go turn that and put it up. Perfect.
So you can
Okay,
see.
I can see her face now. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just the right size really for you.
What are you saying?
She's going to wear that all day.
Yeah, no, I'm not. And then obviously I have left a space there that I would usually fill, but because of constraints of time, I haven't. So that shows you the two completely different styled circlets that we've done today. The really large 1980s style and the very delicate, slightly more rustic version. All right. Well, I hope you've enjoyed watching us this afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a fantastic bank holiday weekend. Please do join us for our live stream, not next week, the week...
Not next week. The May the 25th.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's okay.
We're having a bit of a break. My artistic director is disappearing for a few days, so...
So guys.
So please join us then. I hope you've enjoyed watching this afternoon. Don't forget to hit that like button if you've enjoyed what you've seen. Share us with your friends. And for more inspiration, as Laura was saying, we do have a YouTube channel, so do visit that for more tips and hints. And in the meantime, happy bank holiday weekend. Thank you.